I bought my first Ferrari. I always wanted a Ferrari, and I bought my first Ferrari when I was 25. Hung over in a Burger King on the M1 and crashed it 2 months later because I just thought I was invincible. I mean, it was nuts. And you get all this advice around you because you've got loads of money. And you have all these experts who were really rubbish.
This is the We Built This Business podcast. I'm your host, Daniel O'Sullivan. This is the podcast for UK business owners to share their journey, their knowledge, their sacrifices, and their successes. This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. Hello and welcome back to the We Built This Business podcast. Today, I'm pleased to have David Murray-Hundley, widely known as the Grumpy Entrepreneur. David was a founding member of Commerce One that secured a $22 billion IPO on the NASDAQ in 1999. He has since worked with thousands of startups, scale-ups and founders over the years and has recently written a book called The Startup Rules. David is currently CEO and co-founder of Pario Ventures, who have hundreds of investments and have had numerous exits. David, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And hello to everyone out there.
So, David, thank you for coming on. You've got years of successes and ups and downs, and we're really looking forward to hearing about your journey today. Can you just start by telling us what you're currently up to?
Yeah, so currently still involved with Pario Ventures. We've taken a bit of a different view for 24. So we're very net zero focused, particularly, well, sort of in energy and mobility, but very much in the energy sector at the moment. We've got some exciting businesses coming up in the next few months, mostly US based around the biogas industry. So it's all new for me. I'm having to read a lot of white papers and listen to a lot of professors about stuff, and have my business partner, Kevin, who is from that world, talking at me, and it sounds like a different language. So I'm a bit of education. So that's going well. And I know I'm doing an advisory role over in Saudi Arabia at the moment for a dental business using artificial intelligence to look after patient care and prediction a lot more for dental issues, etc. But predominantly Pario, and we are 14 years in. So there you go.
Wow, yeah, and a lot going on. And amongst all that, you've also found time to write a book as well, and that's been released recently.
Yeah, I actually did a couple of books last year. I took a year off last year. Which I would recommend to everyone if they're able to do so, because life can get a bit on top of you at some point, and we all need a break, and not just a week off. I think you have to take a proper break. So I took the time off. Wrote some books. Became really good on the race simulator, which is I would spend my entire day doing that if I could. And then came back into the Pario fold. Hence the new focus a little bit as well, just because. We were quite generalist. I say we were generalist, but we ended up doing investments in particular areas all the time. But wanted to be a bit more focused, I think, is good, and it's hopefully going to pull off and be a good move by us.
Yeah, excellent. So a lot of our listeners are probably thinking, Grumpy Entrepreneur, where did that come from?
So my wife. So 2012, I think it was 2012. I had to come up with a nickname for me to do with it was a book I was potentially going to write, which I never finished, or it was something to do like that. And someone said, "Oh, you should brand yourself up, David." And I said to my wife, and she was like, "The Grumpy Entrepreneur." And so I used that, and it stuck with me. And the weird thing about it is, I'm not actually that grumpy. I mean, I'm a little grumpy. I mean, I'm not a happy entrepreneur, but I'm a little, it's kind of stuck. And I was actually debating in January about getting rid of it, because people keep going to me, "You don't seem very grumpy." And it's almost like people are going to turn up to a call with me or a meeting and they think I'm going to be some complete nutcase, grumpy nutcase, which I'm not. So Yeah, so anyway, a good friend, David Mitchell, who's been involved with Mercedes F1 branding and that, said, no, don't lose it, and gave me a very quick pep talk, which is why he's very good at what he does, and I'm keeping it.
Excellent. No, love it. Love it. Sounds good. So if we go back to the beginning, David, when you were 18, I've read that you were living in a bus shelter. Can you tell us more about that and how that transpired into you owning your own business?
Yeah, I mean, not recommended. Although it's character building, I have to say. But yeah, so when I was, I had a pretty normal life, amazing parents. And then sadly, when I was 16, literally overnight, my father passed away. And kind of life definitely changed for me and my mum. My mum went off to Portugal. So I was kind of living here in the UK on my own from, late 16, early 17. And I've always had this desire to work. And Volkswagen Audi, who used to have their headquarters in Milton Keynes at Blakelands, I actually went to the opening of that warehouse in 1978 when VW moved to the UK, because my dad was part of VW Audi. So I'd grown up and I wanted to work in the warehouse, and I was staying with my nan, and the only way I could work shifts was to sleep in the bus shelter, because there was no way of getting there. I didn't have a car. I couldn't afford a car. I tried cycling 11 o'clock at night in December. I was never that smart. So I figured there was a stone bus shelter which is now gone, and it was over one of the far corners of the warehouse on the roundabout. And I don't know, it felt safe. So I ended up sleeping rough for quite a bit of time, just because it's the only way I could earn money, which sounds a bit nuts, but it really was the only way I could earn money. So,
and how did that transpire into you owning a business?
Yeah, so I've always been quite entrepreneurial. At school, I had a legal tuck shop, which almost got me expelled from school. And then I sold pirated software as well at school as well. So, and that was the pirated software, I think I was 10 or 11. And the tuck shop was around the same time. So I've always had it in me. Good work ethic, always worked as a kid. And then, I ended up wanting to do a business. I kind of went off to Canada. I went off to New York, came back from New York, was working for my sort of first startup then. But I ended up just, as you do when you're that age, you want to be your own boss, and working on a couple of projects that were going to be in like technology space. And, I look back now and go, how naive was I? Like, unbelievably naive. I really thought I knew it all, and I didn't have a clue. So I was very lucky that I ended up in New York at 21, worked for a company called Intellisys that was out of the back of Barclaycard and Chase Manhattan. So, living the dream in Manhattan at the age of 21, which was awesome. Not sure we got much work done, but the partying was good. And then, then Commerce One came along, and I was really fortunate. It was in kind of the same space as Intellisys, in that e-procurement supply chain space, very first of type on the web. And they were based in Walnut Creek in California, just outside San Francisco. And got involved with them very, very, very early. Didn't realize what I was quite walking into, as how big it would be. In fact, the day we IPO'd on July 17th in 1999. And I still remember the lawyer, Jeff, ringing me. And I was in the UK, I was back in the UK, and he said, David, have you got the paperwork, for all your shares? And I was like, oh yeah, in the back of my car somewhere, sort of thing. And he went, I need the paperwork signed today. I think we hit the end of the year after 6 months of being on NASDAQ. I think we hit $22 billion market cap. We'd only ever made a profit one quarter, which is ironic. You can have 22 billion. Our burn rate was, I can't remember the number, but it was pretty big. And we had Fortune companies as our clients, and we did some pretty amazing mega stuff. I mean, it was a proper .com, boom type stuff. And then within 3 years, we were chapter 11, 0. So literally can go up. What goes up comes down.
So what was your, obviously in that period of that 3 year period, you were still involved in Commerce One. What were you actually doing for them?
So I actually started with them as a kind of heading up pre-sales and that for Europe, for EMEA. And like most US companies, EMEA tends to outperform the US sometimes, which is much to the dislike of the Americans, but that's usually the way I've seen it. And then, I ended up running professional services for over here in Europe. And it was a weird ride. It was like, literally I was kind of living between California, Banbury, and Monaco. That was my life. And, Monaco was kind of party home. Banbury was my normal friends who were like, brought me back down to ground to earth sort of thing. And it was crazy. I mean, I think in 1 year I racked up 380,000 air miles in 1 year with BA. I mean, I was literally on planes pretty much every day, which wore me down after 3 years. And then all over the world. I mean, it's bad when you know the BA staff on your flights because you do so many flights. I knew how the food would be, what schedule the food was in terms of over a week, knew who the staff were. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I think at one point in Heathrow Airport, I remember I had 3 cars in the business car park with stuff in the back. And so I used to come back and go, oh, right, I'll fly down to Monaco or I'll fly up to Norway to where my girlfriend lives. And it was nuts. It was nuts time. I mean, working from home, which I've kind of championed since the 90s, I remember working from home for me was either Ibiza in Santiago, Monaco. And that was me working from home. Like, I'm working and I'm sort of home. So
wow. And so the story goes, so 3 years and it's gone. Is that you've lost everything as well? Did you have all of your wealth in?
Yeah, I also, if you give a 25-year-old quite a lot of money and they haven't got parents around, they're probably going to do some stupid stuff with it. So I definitely did that. I remember I was joking the other day. I bought my first Ferrari. I always wanted a Ferrari. And I bought my first Ferrari when I was 25. Hungover in a Burger King on the M1. And I said to my friend, let's go to the Ferrari dealer in Loughborough. So I bought a 355 and crashed it 2 months later because I just thought I was invincible. It was nuts. It was nuts. And get all this advice around you because you've got loads of money. And you have all these experts who were really rubbish, as it turns out. It's guiding me on how I should spend money. So not that I would have listened, but when I went personally bankrupt, so I actually ended up personally bankrupt here in the UK. It was a bit of an eye-opener, actually, because it was a bit like being back in the bus shelter, as I always describe it. Interestingly, it was in Milton Keynes as well. And, you're given the tools. It was when bankruptcy was 3 years and you were allowed to keep your laptop and some clothes and that, but that's pretty much it. And you can't have credit and, just all that stuff that goes with it. And I have to say, it was quite humbling. The lovely judge who had to bankrupt me because I didn't turn up with a lawyer, he said to me, you'll do it again. You'll be fine, David. I've got to follow the law because the other people on the other side were being idiots. But he was like, you'll be fine. You'll go do it again. So I was bust and it made me a nicer person. I don't think I was particularly nice in my 20s. I think, I was quite obnoxious actually. And then, it just made me a nicer person. And it's humbling to start again. It's quite when you've done it once, you can do it twice sort of thing. You can also go bust again. There is that as well.
Yeah, I mean, failure, I think, also is a word that's not used a lot in the UK. As in, like in America, it's fine. Failure's fine. That's how you learn. But over here, it seems it's more of a stigma attached to it.
Yeah, and even success. So in the US, if you're successful, right, like you buy a Ferrari, you buy a Sunseeker, you live the dream, there's no jealousy. There's zero jealousy. Here in the UK, absolutely the opposite. And a 20-year-old, I remember I collect cars and I'm really into my cars. So I'd have like various cars. And I remember one time in Banbury, I was with a friend and we had the roof off the Ferrari and someone was like, oh, daddy's car. And my mate was like, no, it's not actually, it's actually his. And then when I crashed it, I remember someone made a comment and my friend Mark Graham turned around to them and said, well, at least he can. But it's weird, the UK. It's part of the reason I started my career in the US was you want to go get something, there's no stopping you. There's no like, oh, David, maybe, look at this level sort of thing. And I got that really in Canada when I was living with my sister. And there was this real like, you want to buy that house, because I was very materialistic in my 20s, then this is how you get to it. Whereas the UK, it's like, well, maybe go buy something else. And I find the US, I'm doing a lot in the US again at the moment, which I'm really enjoying. And the attitude is just, it's let's get stuff done, right? Let's just do it. I was doing an interview the other day, and I think I'm sort of half American, half British, because there is a British side to me. But I think, honestly, I think I'm pretty much half American, because I just love the attitude. Don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect country, and I wouldn't want to live there full time again, because I like the UK for lots of reasons. But if you're successful, they look after you, and if you fail, they see it as an achievement, actually, in a kind of weird way. Whereas here, just I talk openly about it because there's nothing to hide, right? And the only person who got themselves bankrupt was me.
So did you just fly to America and go, I'm going to work this out? Was that, did you know someone over there? Was, when you first got that job at Commerce?
No, so with Chase, with New York, I remember the business had just gone bust in the UK. It was Christmas Eve, and I was the only person who turned up to the office, and I was given my, you're basically, the company is no more. And so by January, I think it was January 5th, I got a phone call, and that's how I ended up in the US, in New York. And then, Commerce One was kind of the same, actually. I had to go for a kind of final interview, which was kind of starting the job. And my induction was Thomas Gonzalez interviewing me, the late Thomas Gonzalez Jr. interviewing me at Taco Bell in Walnut Creek. And it was Super Bowl weekend, so we had a Super Bowl party. And that was my induction to kind of Commerce One, and going to see Everclear, who didn't realize how loud they were, and they blew my eardrums for the next 5 days. But yeah, I mean, I look back and go, what an amazing time.
Yeah.
I was so fortunate, so fortunate.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And once Commerce One had gone bust, how did you then get back to? Did you start your own business again, or what did you do next?
Yeah, kind of a mixture. So I had to earn some money, and as we all know, when you start a business, you don't necessarily get paid. So, I was very lucky. I had some good connections. So I ended up actually working for one of the Cengiz brothers down in London, and which was an eye opener. And but it was cool. I enjoyed it actually with A-Site. And then I it's good for my business partner Kevin, because Kevin was just to know the background on Kevin. Kevin was actually my first boss in New York. So we've been around together for a long, long time. And he was buying up. He'd done really well in the .com as well, and he'd kept his money. And he said, "Well, come over to Belgium." So I was CEO of a CRM business based in Brussels, and then we bought because the .com bubble, when it burst, there was all these companies that had $400-500 million invested mostly into technology. Suddenly, they can't pay their bills. Staff don't stay around because their stock options are worth zero. And they've all got this tech. So we ended up getting hold of this company based in the US called Utility One. Nothing to do with Commerce One, but people liked number one, I think, back in the .com bubble. And we ended up buying the tech and kind of modernizing it for the European market. And it ended up selling. And I just kind of, I don't know, I've always been really lucky. So I just ended up, I honestly, I feel so fortunate in my life about the opportunities I've had. It just seems to happen for me. I don't know. I guess I haven't won the lottery yet, though. So.
That's true. Yeah, that's the next one. I guess because you give it a go, you do it. That's the key, isn't it? You don't say, like you said, sit back and think, oh, I should buy that smaller house. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to do what it takes to get that bigger one.
Well, yeah, and I get, and it's interesting at what I'm going through at the moment. I'm really going back to my roots at the moment, career-wise. So I love doing Pario. It was never meant to be the business it is. It was just meant to be kind of a private thing that Kevin and I did. I love working with Kevin because he's one of my best friends. He's like a brother. And I'm doing a lot in the US at the moment, and I'm really enjoying. It's late nights because obviously it's West Coast most of it, so it's like they don't wake up until 4 o'clock outside. I said to someone last night in the pub, I'm getting quite a buzz of back doing stuff over there, and the stuff Kevin and I are doing on the biogas, that's going to be in the US, and yeah, I'm enjoying it at the moment. The UK is going through a bit of certainly in the startup world is a bit of a lull. There is definitely hard raising money in the UK right now for startup and scale ups. A lot easier in the US. I commented last week actually on LinkedIn that I'm seeing the gap widening between valuations as well on the US and UK. And that's sort of a couple of years ago I was chairman of a company called eFundamentals, had been for 6 years. And we sold the business to a company called Commerce IQ that are based in Silicon Valley. And I'm pretty sure we got at least double the price that we would have got in the UK for the business on the same deal. And I'm seeing the appetite in the US is very still, almost you can raise £1 million off the back of a deck. Whereas the UK, everyone's rightly so being driven by revenue, break even, and runway. It's always been more risk adverse here, but it's tough in the UK for founders at the moment, without a doubt. And I think it will do for another at least 12 months. Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Is it just because we haven't bounced back as quickly from kind of the COVID pandemic? And
I think a little bit of that. I still think the UK got a bit carried away in the pandemic with money being thrown at businesses, and some rightly so, and then some not rightly so, that took cash. I know a lot of businesses that were cash rich that took the money, whereas eFundamentals, we just done a raise at the time, and we didn't take any of the incentives at all because we had money. I think there is been some bad investments in the UK. I think SCIS and EIS is a great thing. However, it kind of, certainly at seed level, I think angel investors particularly aren't doing enough DD on businesses. There's definitely a fake it to make it attitude in the UK with the startup scene. And I'm seeing that more and more. Some of them are falling down now though, but there's definitely that. And I think people don't DD enough on deals, and then they wonder, the business plan doesn't go to plan, and I think it's a good thing that it's hard, because it means it gets rid of the rubbish businesses and the rubbish founders, and the good businesses, if they can ride this out, the good businesses can ride this out, then they're in a good place for a year or so's time, I would say, because you always get the good ones will always just ride through the storm. But yeah, UK just feels, I don't know, it's like we kind of admitted we were in a downturn, but we didn't want to admit how much of a downturn it was, so we did it in drip feeds. And I just, I spend a lot of time looking at different economies, and I'm like, we're not in great shape. When I look at somewhere like India, I was on calls with India yesterday. India's just crazy. I mean, crazy, like how the growth and just the change in culture there. And the US is the same. And I don't know, UK just today feel like we've lost our mojo a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. One of your challenges that you put before we spoke was to do with the noise in the startup space. Is that down to, like you said, the fact that we're just not as confident as those in America of the future, or?
Yeah, there's definitely a cultural difference. I mean, you can US, I deal with US founders. It's quite a challenge as a British person dealing with US founders, because there is definitely a cultural change. Although I think they find me quite amusing. I was talking to two guys in LA yesterday, and they were quite straight-faced, and by the end of it, they were laughing because, I'm typical British, right? I'm just going to, I'm going to have a sarcasm and a sense of humour. The UK, I think there's a confidence level. I think there is also we were hooked up on valuation in this country a little bit, and we see that as success. And I don't think valuation, unless you're selling the company, is success, right? I just think, I had someone the other day go, oh, if you get in early on the investment, you'll see like quick returns. And I was thinking, oh, wow, they're going to do like a primary, secondary. And he went, no, the valuation will go up. And I'm like, I can't buy a beer with it, can I? So I can't go down the pub and buy a pint because I still own the shares and they're not sold. I think also people see raising money as a massive success thing, and I'm like, no, not really. I yes, it's hard work, and yes, you deserve some credit, but I don't think it's sell stuff. There was an interesting post on LinkedIn the other day. Got guys called Dan. I'm trying to remember the name of his company. Anyway, he said instead of looking at decks, he now asks for the sales plan because that's actually all it's about, and he's actually spot on. It is absolutely about selling stuff. And I spoke to a founder yesterday who put £2 million of his own money into his startup, which I have so much respect for, because I respect people who can put £1,000 in because it's important to them. I'll be on their credit card, or they put their own money from an exit in. Have massive respect for people like that. And I think we're very scared to put our hands in our pocket in the UK with startups, without a doubt. And even just advisory stuff, I get asked to do advisory stuff. The US are like, right, it's X amount a day. They don't even wobble on this stuff. UK, it's like the opposite. It's kind of like, wow, gosh. So I don't know if it'll evolve. I'm not sure how it will evolve. I hope it does, because I think we have some great businesses here in the UK, and we have some great startups and some great founders. But the great ones tend to be the quietest ones, which I find as well. So I know a lot of very good founders who've built very good businesses, and you won't see them in all the tech newspapers or awards, because I hate awards. So all these awards and stuff, they'll be busy building their business. And that's the other interesting thing for me, is the ones that you don't hear about are the ones that are actually doing really well.
Yeah. And is that a real key thing that you enjoy doing, which is, helping startups, advising startups, working with them?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed it. I did have a moment last year thinking whether I still enjoyed it, so hence I took a year off, and I've come back with a different view on it. But yeah, I do enjoy it. It's during lockdown, I did a small thing that I thought would be helping, do a 20-minute call with startups and founders. And I thought it might be 100 people. Ended up being 2,380 different companies and people. And it was because the day before lockdown was announced, I went to get my hair cut in Banbury. It's the only time I ever go into Banbury, but my friend James has a salon and I go to get my hair cut there. And I went to the coffee shop. It was a private coffee shop, and it was when everything was emptied out. And the guy looked so upset. And I ordered a coffee and a Victoria sponge, because I love a Victoria sponge. And he gave me loads of Victoria sponge. Said, "Oh, do you have children? You can take more because I'm not going to sell it." And I had a little pep talk with him and said, "Look, it will be okay. And you need to think about this and think about this and that." He probably didn't even want to listen to me, but he did. And the next day, I actually sent an email to Russ Shaw, who runs Tech London Advocates. And I said, we need to do something. So I did it myself, and I put a thing out on LinkedIn. And then 15 months I did it. And whilst homeschooling as well. 2,300 and something companies all across the world, literally everywhere. And I did it all for free. So
that's incredible. Absolute hats off to you. That is really, really incredible. 20 minutes of your time, over 2,000 businesses.
I never worked out the number of hours. I did a lot of walking because we live in the middle of nowhere. So I probably broke the rule about going out for an hour a day or whatever the stupid thing was. So I did a lot of walking. So people spoke to me on a lot of walks and that. I think some people spoke to me when I was running. I used to, early morning, late night. But yeah, it was really, it kind of felt like a thing I had to do. It's like you have a moment and you go you need to do this, David. So yeah, I did it. So
really incredible. And when you're speaking to them, was there a common theme that you would tend to advise them on? Is there anything kind of, when you speak to that many businesses?
Yeah, there was a majority were scared, really scared about what was going to happen to their business. A lot of them had money that they were raising that had stopped. So angels just pulled out overnight on investment deals. So there was that. And, a lot of startups are working month to month. There was those that were kidding themselves that it was going to be 2 months. And I was going, nah, this is long term, man. So, and obviously it was right. And there was some that took opportunity to pivot. They could see opportunity in it. And there was those that you have to break the bad news that they're probably going to close down. You know, I remember the evening that Boris announced, we were all in the pub, actually, and the pub decided to have a free bar because basically they weren't going to sell the beer. And he was on screen. I had to ring a friend of mine, Nigel, nice guy, and basically tell him that his business was probably done, which is not nice news to break to anyone. That's not nice news. And he knew that was what was coming, but it's still not nice. But yeah, it was a common thing, but basically, you know, surviving, I think, more than anything with a lot of founders. And there was a lot of, you know, there's another thing as well. You know, I moan about homeschooling. You know, we live in the middle of nowhere, fresh air, the weather was beautiful, 2 children, wife, we're all healthy. But there were some people, founders, that needed to be in the office, and they lived in a flat, in a high-rise flat or something with no balcony, and they were stuck there on their own, and they were used to having that environment. So there was a few people like that, you know, I was genuinely concerned that they were okay, if I'm honest, about their mental health, because it was really tough for some people. I remember a journalist from, I think it was the FT, and he said, I'm stuck in a flat with no balcony. I could be anywhere in the world. Like, it was that, you know, that's not a positive thing, right? So yeah, it was, it definitely formed. And I think when it was getting to the end, it was a lot of people like, you know, how do we come out of this? You know, what's it going to look like? And money, you know, raising investment, and etc. So there was a lot of that conversation at the end as well.
Yeah, really incredible. 2,000 businesses. Have you kept in touch? Has any of them like kept in touch with you, or is any like changed?
No, they're all bloody fickle. No, they now there is some actually, and you know, there's some that aren't around anymore. But yeah, there's some, like, people prop up on my LinkedIn, and they're like, oh right, yeah, you were that business and stuff. So yeah, there's some I've kept in touch with and kept an eye on, and there's been some really good stuff. There was you know, I remember there was a few I was talking to at the time, and you know, they're doing really well now. Like, I see that, you know, there's a few that spring to mind that at the time were literally at planning stage, and then now they're smashing it out there. So yeah, it's good, it's nice. My view was, if I could change one person's business, that was an achievement. So for me, that just doing that one thing is enough for me. So yeah,
incredible. It's one of the best things I've heard. Really good, really good. On the you know, the startup side of things, what piece of advice would you give to someone who's looking to start up a business in 2024?
Gosh, you got to be a little bit unhinged. So, you know, like, you know, if you're not unhinged, then probably not for you. You've got to be willing to sacrifice a lot. So it depends on your age, right? Kevin and I have this massive debate about Kevin. So Kevin had sold his business in his late 30s and didn't start a family until then. And Kevin's got this big debate that you can't really build a successful business unless you're young, free and single, right? I disagree with him. We don't see eye to eye on this. However, I do see his point about risk. You know, when you've got a family, risk is taken very differently. You're obviously, your family is your priority, and that. And I look back at, you know, my 20s, and I go, well, even my 30s, you know, yeah, the worst thing I had to worry about was a girlfriend, and even that I wasn't particularly great at. So you know, it was more for me, you know, and I wasn't particularly great at keeping in touch with friends and stuff like that. And you just sacrifice everything. You're like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'll jump on a plane tomorrow to San Francisco. Yeah, it's no problem. Someone asked me to jump on a plane today for San Francisco. It better be worth a lot of money, because I'm not going to do it, because I hate being away from home. I'm a homeboy now. So I think consider that. I think don't assume raising money is going to fix the problem. Yeah, I mean, try and bootstrap. You know, once you have shareholders are hard work to manage expectations, and it's no longer your business. I think, you know, test quickly. So don't become obsessed with market fit, like just product fit, just try stuff. And I say to every founder, go sell something. Even if it's one thing, prove that you can sell something. If you can sell something, you're a step ahead of a load of other businesses. And don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. Do keep the focus very key. I think once you've done the selling bit and you've proved it on one part of your product, you can go and build Rome, whatever, in sort of thing. But I see a lot of founders that go, well, I'm going to do this, and this. I'm like, wow, gosh, that's amazing amount of focus. Just do the one thing and prove that, and then move on from there. Don't get hooked into the 3-year exit thing, because it's absolute rubbish. eFundamentals, I was 6.5 years on that. That was a year old, so 7.5 years old. That is early. That is quick to get 7.5 year an exit. Commerce One were crazy times when we got an exit, but it takes 10 years to build a decent business, right? And it's don't get obsessed with the IPO thing, because it rarely happens. It's probably trade sale and the other thing I say to founders, how about just building a business that makes money, provides jobs, you profit from, your shareholders profit from, and maybe you keep it for the next 30 years. We seem to have lost this kind of, like, when I was growing up, and I used to, Sir John Harvey Jones used to do a TV show called Troubleshooter. And that was part of the reason I ended up doing what I do, because I loved reading his books and what he did. And these businesses were like Morgan, 50 years old, ICI, there were all these businesses that were really, really kind of foundation of kind of British economy. And I love that. But people seem to have gone, oh no, I'm going to be in and out in 5 years. And I just think, gosh, just build a business that and it can be boring as well. Don't be like the sheep. The most boring businesses are the best investments ever. They really are.
Yeah, it's the whole kind of build to sell generation, essentially, isn't it? With it,
it really is. And I think, like, wouldn't it be nice to have done something in your 20s and you're sitting there in your 60s going, that's like, I've still got it and it pays my pension. Like, I just live off it. And I think, the people are obsessed with this, like, build to sell and then move on to the next one. I'm like, well, just have one business.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's always on the, people are looking for that next big thing, and also the quick fix as well. I don't know if it comes back to, we had a little conversation off air, didn't we, about social media and, the way that everything's changing and, everything's so much faster. What's your interaction with social media? Are you on it much?
No, I try, and then I hate it. People will see with various accounts, I go for a real, let's have a go at Twitter or X, whatever it's called these days. I haven't touched Twitter in about a year. LinkedIn, I do a little bit, but I get kind of fed up with the noise on LinkedIn. I definitely don't TikTok, that's for sure. And I have little moments to try, and I find it. One of the things people are going to laugh because I know what I mean when I say this. LinkedIn, for example, right? Those posts where people go, I'm a failure, and then underneath it's like this, war and peace about blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, who is reading this rubbish? Like, it's just rubbish, right? And then I have a bit of a moment, probably the grumpy bit. Like, I read one the other day and it was someone going, my business failed, and it was all these things that were at fault. And I'm like, do you know what I put? It was your fault. I know it sounds really cold, but it was your fault. And then another one was like, oh, it's been really awful. And I said, oh, what about your shareholders? Like, get over yourself, right? It's just like, stop feeling sorry for yourself. And there's definitely some of this social media, like, oh my God, it's really hard and tough. I'm like, wow, there's someone in the world having a much tougher day. I just read one literally about half an hour ago, and the guy's got cancer back, and he's put it on his LinkedIn, and he's a nice guy. He's done a lot for the startup world, and he's got cancer in his 2 lesions on his liver, and it's not looking great. And I go, that's a rubbish day, right? So I'm making sure I don't swear, but that's a rubbish day. Yeah. That is like, that's something to think, holy smoke.
Now, you've had so many amazing stories that you shared with us before the show, and one of them I wanted to kind of touch on was when you were thought to have been kidnapped when you were at Commerce once. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
So I've never really spoken about this. So you're probably the first. This is probably the first time. So when I was at Commerce One, I used to go over quite regularly, and I was going through my stage of, I just split up with my long-term girlfriend, Jackie, and I was going through my stage of really partying, right? So make just a disclaimer, I've never done drugs in my life because I would be bloody addicted, so probably a good thing. But I do know how to party, and I can party even now I can still party, but back then I could party for weeks and not see anyone and just party. So I fly to San Francisco. And what happened was Jackie was with me. I then dumped her in the middle of San Francisco, which shows you I wasn't a particularly nice guy that makes someone fly all the way. We then hung out for a few days. She then flew back. I was meant to go to Pleasanton, and it was a big kickoff thing and whatever. And I ended up going, I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to go and party in San Francisco, like a proper party in San Francisco, which I did. And bear in mind, this is before we had smartphones. So I probably didn't even I might have had a US mobile on me, right? But I didn't read messages. I think I just switched it off, and my UK number wasn't working. So off I go, have a great time for a week and a half. Literally, didn't speak to anyone, just partied with people. And then I thought, God, I'm feeling a bit rough now. I'm going to fly home. So I changed my flight back. I did a different airline to the UK. So I get back to the UK. I'm oblivious to what's going on. Bear in mind, Commerce One was in the newspapers quite a lot and the media quite a lot because of the money side of it. I get back to the UK. I get back to Banbury. No one said anything to me. I go home and I'm like, I've had a nap because I was really just knackered. I switched my phone on and I'm like, oh my God. I opened my email for Commerce One. I'm like, oh my God. And literally there's a guy called John, what is his name? John Ferrara? Can't remember his name. Lovely guy. Partied with him in London. Lovely guy, older than me. And they just panicked because they couldn't get hold of me. And the airline said that I didn't use the return flight. And there was all this other stuff that I hadn't turned up at hotels and all this thing. So they had the US, they had the Californian police involved, who can't have been that good because I managed to get back to the UK without being stopped. So someone wasn't great, but they spoke to the airline. The airline wouldn't let them know the details, but they said, yes, we can confirm he flew to the US, but he's not using return. And so anyway, all this tracking me down. And they had the police looking for me and the whole lot, and everyone thought I'd been kidnapped for loads of money. Although you'd think after a week there'd been no ransom note, that probably I was just being DMH. But yeah, there was that. Oh, there's so many stories like that. How I've ended up alive, I have no idea.
Did they say who they thought might have kidnapped you?
I don't know. This is interesting. So you've got to bear in mind, I didn't really care. So now I'd be like, well, why were you worried that I was going to get kidnapped? Like, if something happened with the business. And I think probably there had been some threats on the business, but I was so oblivious in my 20s. I think I just went, oh, okay. And I remember John Starr's ringing me, and he goes, everyone's proper worried. And I went, oh, okay.
Yeah, let's crack on.
I mean, luckily I'm not a nightmare anymore, but I was very high maintenance. So.
Well, you have to publish an autobiography. That could be the next book.
I've got stuff like crashing the Sunseeker boat in Ibiza that didn't even belong to me. I've got things like renting helicopters in New York as a taxi to go to nightclubs. Royalty, there's Norwegian royalty in there and Monegascan royalty in there as well. Literally they could do a movie. Someone watched The Wolf of Wall Street, and when they came out of the cinema, they messaged me and went, it's you without the drugs.
The new Jordan Belfort.
Literally, my mate Mayfair Nick went and saw it. He went, mate, it's you. Simple as.
Because when you were in New York, you said that you used the World Trade Center bar as pretty much your local.
Yeah, so that was our local. Kevin and I got locked in there. So my apartment was in Rector Place, which is just across from the World Trade Center. So Chase used to own loads. So there was loads of Brits, and we all had these apartments in 225 Rector Place. And the World Trade was our local. So there was a bar at the bottom in the old World Trade, called the Ship, I think. And then there was the Windows of the World, which was at the top, which was the restaurant and bar. And it used to be our local, and we basically, the end of the night, would end up in there. And because they used to serve late. And one evening, Kevin and I were messing around, and the last lift of the night went down, and we got locked in the bar until security came up and removed us. But that lift used to take 57 seconds to go down. And the thing we used to do was make me run around it as it was going down, obviously drunk, and then be pushed out into the main foyer. And we found that really funny. And I used to do that quite a lot. Stole a sign from the World Trade Center once because there used to be a walkway to the Dow Jones building. At about 4 a.m, they wouldn't let me through the revolving door. So I said to my mate, Andy Bertie, I'm going to nick the sign. So I picked up this sign, walked off, walked across the street, stole a cone as well, because that's, standard Brit. And Rent-A-Cop was outside my apartment building. I said I found it in the street, handed it to him through the window, legged it. And then the next morning, I'm going across the walkway and the sign's back. I'm like, it's amazing.
Did you say Rent-A-Cop?
Rent-A-Cop, yeah. Well, Manhattan, because they have like Rent-A-Cops everywhere, don't they, outside apartment buildings. So he was sat outside our apartment building, keeping an eye on things. And there's me climbing over a fence with a sign and a cane and then handed it to him.
Incredible. Well, when you do write that book, I'm really looking forward to reading it. So, dealing with lots of startups from around the world and everything like that, your book, the Startup Rules, can you tell us just a little bit more about how that would help someone who's looking to start up their own business?
Yeah, so it's a kind of it's for people to look at it and go, just to make you rethink. So even when I was doing the book along with Kevin, there's stuff that you forget, right? That you go, you should think about this on your startup, or you should think about this, with your board or your advisors or your business plan. And I've been doing something similar this week. I've done a 200, because I got a bit bored. I wrote a product this week that does a 200 check on people's business plans and decks, because you forget this stuff, right? And that was the reason we did it. Also, just because I kind of find myself repeating myself a lot to a lot of founders. So it's kind of like, well, go and look at the book. But, when you're certainly when you're starting from scratch, there's so much to remember, and you can go and Google something, but you'll be given 10 things why. And I was kind of doing it as a bit of not an A to Z, that's the wrong thing to use, but so people go, oh, wow, okay, yes, I hadn't thought about that. And I didn't want to make money. I mean, so I looked this morning, actually, I hadn't looked for ages. So we're at 55,000 copies now.
Wow. Well, I ordered it last night, I think. So mine's in the post on Amazon at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to reading it.
You're like me, you like a normal book, but the other version's free, right? So, your book's good when people are selling my book on eBay for twice the price of what it is. Not that I'm going to see that. And in the US, someone sold a copy of my book for $60. I don't know who bought that book for $60. I don't shake their hand because I don't think it's worth that. But obviously with the audio and the digital is all free. I couldn't get away with doing free on the printed thing, but it's just my little bit to try and help, really, sort of thing. I'm doing a couple more at the moment. One around scaling, because that's a lot harder than people think. Like you were saying earlier, startups are harder than you think. Scaling is really hard. And we in the UK, a lot of our scale-ups fail. So we haven't got a great track record here in the UK, but it is very, very difficult to do.
So being first to market, would you say that is one of the big competitive advantages or not?
Nah. So Commerce One was not first to market, but we were the biggest. Intellisys in New York, I worked for, was first to market. And they went chapter 11 the month we IPO'd Commerce One. So there you go. That says it all. No, I think first to market, people bang on about first to market. I think you are literally testing the water. I look back to, we did Covisint, which was the General Motors Ford thing with Commerce One. It was the first automotive cloud in the world ever. I was the guy involved with it. In fact, I did the launch at the Geneva Motor Show with the COO of General Motors on it when I was a young lad. And that was first of type, failed. It's not, failed mostly because of the automotive manufacturers not getting on. But apart from that, it's not, it's very risky, and I see a lot of companies really want to be that first one. And I'm like, the amount that actually succeed, if you look at just on the Commerce One thing, if you look at people that came along when we were along, Ariba, who's now Ariba SAP, they're still around, but Commerce One's not here, Intellis is not here, BVR's not here. So I wouldn't want to be the first to market just because I'm going, you don't know what you don't know. And I think these days we rely on too many systems to look at product fit. And I go get some people in a room, buy them some pizza, get them to use your product. They will tell you everything you're not aware of with your product, and you'll probably delay your go live. I had one the other day and I said, have you tested? Have we out tested the product? He was like, yeah, we've got this company that did testing. I went, no. Give it to people. Let them use it. They are going to tell you that you probably didn't need 90% of the products that you've built, and actually you've got some of it wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, really good advice. I think that's the thing with a startup. Everyone envisages it. It's never happened before. You know, it has to be something that's completely new.
There's and people want to be the next Meta or LinkedIn, and it drives me bonkers, right? Because I'm like, there's not very many Metas. There's not very many. You know, Reid Hoffman, when he did LinkedIn, you know, no longer owns it because he obviously sold it to Microsoft. But, you know, Reid didn't do it. You know, Reid did it because he wanted to change things. It didn't quite go to plan for him on LinkedIn, I would say. But yeah, this is obsessive. And there's this other thing as well about, I'd say this to founders as well if you're starting up. Don't get people to sign NDAs. Ridiculous, right? Like so many do it. Go, could you sign my NDA? I'm like, number one, I don't really care about your idea. Two, I'm not in the business of doing that, so I don't know why you're so paranoid. And three, NDAs are worthless anyway, legally. And it's just a pain in the neck. And there's this like obsession about we're in stealth mode. The Americans love stealth mode startups. California loves them. UK doesn't like them so much, but the US loves a stealth startup. What is that about? Like, a friend of mine, Claire, in the US, she used to have a great saying that you're not the only one to come up with the bloody idea.
There's someone else. There's always someone else in the world that's done it before.
Yeah, they all think they're Einstein or someone. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, it's just ridiculous, and it just wastes time, and it looks really bad as well. Like, if I see stealth startup, not interested. Like, I just don't even talk to them. It's like,
you mentioned the owner of, or the original owner of LinkedIn now, and I did read that you got an award from them. Was it?
I did. The only award I've ever liked, and I peaked too quickly. Yeah, so I won. I got LinkedIn European Business Leader of the Year, and it was given to me by Reid. And I got mentoring sessions with Reid, who is an amazing character. Really is a nice guy. And yeah, someone put me forward for the award, and I didn't actually think I was going to I don't really rate myself that much. So I was like, it was a worldwide kind of thing. And I was like, I'm not going to win. And then I got to the final three, and you had to do like a voting thing to get to the final three. And I may have paid some people in a pub to vote for me by buying them beer. Possibly. I had Michael Schumacher in my head going, win at all costs, David. And when I get competitive, I'm like, right, I want to win now. So, and then he got to the final three. And interestingly, I took my cat to the vet when they were doing it live. So Reid now knows that, but I went to the vet, and my friend Matt at the time was like, you're going to win. I'm like, no, I'm not going to win, man. Like, I've seen who I'm up against. They're much better. And I was known as the startup kid then, because I was in my 30s, so you can still get away with it. And yeah, I went to the vets, and which is why you can hear me on the video not quite sure what to say, because my cat was in the other room. And yeah, so most people didn't know that. There was lots of people, like, I think you can hear on it, there's a cheer, and it was my friend runs a boxing gym, Dave Earl, and it was them, for some reason they hadn't done their mic, and it was them cheering that I'd won. But the whole of ITV was watching, because my wife was a producer for ITV at the time, and they'd all like voted for me. And yeah, I won. And then yeah, it was. I mean, I've won other awards. Not really bothered about them. I get put up for awards. I don't turn up to them, so I'm that annoying person who goes, I'm not coming for dinner. I don't want to. I am that. Last year I was up for an award, and They were interviewing me and stuff, and I know what they were doing now. They were seeing whether I was going to turn up. They kept dropping hints and sending me, and I'm like, nah, I don't really do those things. They're not really that good. And I just can't. It's a whole like, it's a bit like networking, which my wife says I need to get better at. And this is advice for a founder, actually. You do need to network. I hate it because I hate the whole, let's all pat each other on the back. Aren't we doing amazingly well, sort of thing. And people, I don't really like talking about myself. So, like, asking me what I do, I'm like, oh, not much. It's like when people go around a room, I'm that guy when everyone does their big intros. Oh, I've done this and done this and done this. Me, I go, oh, I've done some stuff. Move on. It's just...
Like, I'm a listener. That's what it is. Amazing. David, it's been incredibly interesting. I genuinely could talk to you probably for the next 2 or 3 hours, but I know we have other things that you've got on today. So how can people who have listened to this podcast find out a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I have a website, which is thegrumpyentrepreneur.co.uk. So there's one thing. I'm on LinkedIn. I am one of these people. I reply to everyone. Even if it's a one-liner, I do reply to everyone. They can find me through that. I do virtual coffees as well if people want to have a quick chat, which I do on my website, which is generally a half an hour. And just, I'm happy to talk to founders and that if they've got challenges. Pario as well. You can find me through the parioventures.com website as well. And I am, as much as I am the grumpy entrepreneur, I'm always happy to take a call from people. So not that grumpy, sort of grumpy.
No, I think you're the friendliest grumpy entrepreneur I've ever met. That's for sure. So fantastic episode. Thank you so much, David, for coming on. Really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Daniel.
That was another episode of We Built This Business. If you do like the episode, please like and subscribe, and we'll be back next Tuesday. Thank you.